Hello, everybody, and welcome to you on Yachting Art for this Access Talk, Nicolas Venance. Today, this live show will be dedicated to the catamaran market. Cruising catamaran market is structured around two offers, comfort catamarans and sports catamaran. And the question a lot of viewers ask on Yachting Art is how best optimize the ratio between the comfort and the performance aboard a catamaran. To this question, I'm today with Bruno Belmont. Hello, Bruno.
Hello, Nicolas.
Bruno Belmont, you are responsible for the product marketing at Access Catamaran. And I also receive Marc Guillemot. Hello, Marc.
Hello, Nicolas.
Marc Guillemot, famous skipper who is no more longer being introduced. So, gentlemen, you are both specialists in the catamaran market. Bruno for having worked for 30 years in the Beneteau Group for the CNB company, and Marc for having sailed aboard racing monohulls and multihulls, but also on racing catamarans. Bruno Belmont, it's incredible when you are interested in the catamaran market to discover a sort of duopoly on the market between very comfort units and very sports units.
It's true. If we go back 30 years ago, there was only one big market that was representing the balance between performance and comfort. But over the years, we've seen that more and more customers were demanding for more comfort, and there's been a move of the heart of the market towards very, very comfortable units, both with queen size or king size bed, side accesses, huge fridge. I mean, almost the appliance of a house moved into a boat. And this is now representing over 90% of the market. 90% of the market, it's huge. This trend was started with Lagoon like 22 years ago with the Lagoon 410. And now Fontaine Pajot, Robertson & Kane with the Leopards, Bali, or even Nautitech have joined this representation of the today cruising market.
On the other side, you have clearly sport units.
Yes. At the meantime that those boats were moving towards a lot of comfort, those units were moving towards a lot more performance. And to do that, they used high-tech materials like carbon fiber and stuff. They've dedicated the boats to high sensations, requiring higher skilled skippers. And you cannot take those boats if you are not a really good skipper, because the trade in comfort that they did was moved into a lot of power. So those boats are flying a hull. They are really fun to sail, but they need to have good skippers on board. And because it's a small part of the market, less than 10%, of course, there are very few units built every year and very expensive. So it's a tiny market for very experienced people, like Marc Guillemot, who's sailing on a TS very often, for instance.
Marc Guillemot, apart from racing catamarans, up till now, you have mainly sailed aboard a lot of rather sporty catamarans.
Yes, apart from Imoca racing boat or multi-hull, I sometimes sail with family or friends. Usually, I prefer to sail on boats capable of going fast on one hull. And I remain attached to the fun of steering. And I admit that I take a lot of pleasure at anchor in a comfortable boat.
Bruno Belmont, you took part in the launch of a new brand, Access Catamarans, a brand which stands out completely on the market due to its positioning. What was the starting point of this project?
Well, as you said before, there was this new market with on one side 90% pure comfort, the other side pure performance, and we thought that in the middle there was room for a new offer, an offer that would be a balance between the pleasure of sailing and the pleasure of anchoring, the pleasure of living on board. Because we thought it was not killing the performance to have a nice bed. It was not killing the performance to have good fridges. We thought that we had to take a lighthouse, a goal to follow, which was the sail area over displacement ratio, which shows the performance. The sail area is the engine of the boat, and the displacement is what you're going to carry with you. And we took numbers as I say, a lighthouse to follow, to design the boat in every aspect of its design. We wanted the boat to be fun in light airs. We wanted the people to kill the engine at 5 knots and take pleasure at the wheel.
Light airs. How did you achieve this goal, Bruno?
Well, we simplified the accommodation, but with no threat to the comfort that people expect. So to explain this better, we wanted the same amount and size of fridges. We wanted to have the same very comfortable beds. But when we had a set of 3 doors on a conventional cruising cat, maybe replacing this by just a simple door and a simple shelf was saving a lot of weight, was not changing the volume of lockers, or actually it was providing more locking space, but it was much lighter and actually less expensive also to build. So it was a win-win situation for people who are ready to trade a little bit of the fancy items to get a lighter and therefore a more performing, more fun to sail boat.
And about the cockpit?
Same as the cockpit or the saloon, we didn't want to shrink it, but we wanted to shrink the platform as much as we could, because having a smaller platform with a good level of accommodation makes a lighter boat, and therefore a boat that is going to pitch less, so it's going to be more fun to steer.
Among the signature of the XS catamaran, the position of the mast.
Yeah, that was the tricky part, because of course we wanted the mast as aft as we could, because this is meaning more efficiency. It's a higher aspect ratio. It's meaning more performance. And it's also easier to trim and easier to use. But we paid a lot of attention to what was the result in terms of structure below the mast foot, because having the mast nowhere near a bulkhead was going to add a lot of weight for the structure of the mast. So we made this balance between having the mast at the best possible location for performance, but also taking a lot of attention to the weight that it was consequently going to provide. This is just a few examples, because we had a team of 20 people trying to go into every detail of the design, to every time it was possible try to save some weight, and it was a teamwork, because we had NATA with the interior designer, VPLP outside, and us with the XS team and the Beneteau group supporting this research to try to improve the details, basically.
Marc Guillemot, how do you think this approach makes sense?
For me, there must always be a good balance between comfort and performance. So a boat which is somewhere between the performance of TS5 on a super comfort like Bali. Yes, it speaks to me, and I subscribe to it. I don't like the sound of the engine, so being able to turn it off at the first breeze.
Marc, you really love comfort?
To put forward my competitive side, I would like to say that I am not interested by comfort. But once you have tested it, it's hard to do without it. In order, it's more easy to start cruising after years of competition than the other way around.
Bruno Belmont, how do you remove complexity from a stick catamaran to make it more comfortable?
3 words: keep it simple. If you search for more sensation, you need to save weight, and simplicity always saves weight. It also saves cost, and it saves maintenance. It's all what a sailor should want on a boat. So simplicity, for me, provides more performance.
Better performance. What about boards, the famous.
Dagger boards was, of course, the first topic we talked about when we said, how do we want to rate the performance level? I remember back 20 years ago, there was a very nice discussion between specialists, and that discussion was led by Eric Lerouge, who maybe you know, he's a famous yacht designer in France, specializing in performing both monohull or catamarans.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy had been studying this market in detail and studying the points of having or not having a dagger board. And he went, who he was pushing for performing boat, he said for a cruising cat, it doesn't make so much sense. And the reasons he was explaining was that in shallow waters, a dagger board is less performing than a fixed keel because it has to be up. And catamarans do sail a lot in shallow waters. So that was one of the arguments that he used. One of the other ones was that the volume of the fixed keel means less volume for the hull. So the hull can have slicker hull lines with more prismatic coefficients. So a better system to damp the pitching moment of the boat. So again, it sounds awkward, but it's actually adding performance to the boat. And then there was some more, let's say, bold statement, like, first of all, it's more expensive. Second, it's more tricky to trim, and you need to be a good sailor to trim properly the dagger boards, because if they are too low in strong weather, you can either break them or turn around the boat, which is not something you want. And they are also more maintenance, and of course they are more fragile. So when we summed up all those points, we decided to follow his advice and to stay with fixed keel on the excess line.
How did you manage to have a regularity in performances during all an ocean passage?
On a cruising cat, I think the payload is essential. Payload is the capacity of the boat to have a different weight at different times or different configuration of sailing. If you look at a catamaran crossing an ocean, the last days, he will be faster than the early days. For just one good reason, it's going to be lighter. So because the food is eaten, because the drinks have been drunk, so the boat is lighter and performs better. But to maintain a good average performance with VPLP, we decided to make a very U-shaped hull for excess, because a U-shaped hull will vary in height when it's loaded, but it will not vary in waterline beam, and the waterline beam can be a very strong drag if it's too wide. So when we designed the boat, from day one, we took in account that there would be some payload change a lot on those boats, because some customers want to have a lot of options and some want to keep it simple. But to design a hull that is capable of being heavy or light without big changes in the waterline beam was for us very interesting.
Yeah.
And for example, the racing machines or the boats that are much more performing have more V shape, so they don't like to be overloaded. And that's why when you look at the arc on the start line, some of the very high performing boats are not very fast because they are too heavy for the design.
Marc, all these different technical aspects seems to feel a strong pleasure at sailing. For you, Marc, what exactly is the pleasure at sailing?
The pleasure of sailing is not necessarily attached to the type of the boat. On a small wooden boat or cruising catamaran, I can take the same pleasure as on a racing boat.
What about the sensitivity at helm station?
My priority is to take fun in steering. Have a look on the sail, on the sea, rest of the boat, and to have easy access to maneuver. And of course, to be able to speak with the other member, the crew member. So I like to steer when all this thing is possible.
Bruno Belmont, in conclusion, after the first sea trial of your latest baby, the XS11, how did you feel to be able to talk?
Well, you know, the Access project, and it's been a privilege to lead it with such a great team with VPLP, with Nauta and the Beneteau Group. When you have the privilege to work for 4 or 5 years on the project and you start sailing with the first boats, and that your target was to have a boat that is pleasant to steer even in light airs, and you bring along Marc Guillemot and it gives you the feedback that it's actually fun boat to sail. I think it gave to everybody, the 20 people who worked on this project, a lot of joy.
A lot of joy. So, gentlemen, it's with these words we will conclude this first Access talk. Thank you, you both, for sharing your experience with our viewers, and see you soon for the next Access talks.